Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a good week so far. Enjoying this wonderful weather that we're having here in the Twin Cities. It definitely has been a pretty awesome week. Excuse me. Welcome to MACMH's Community Podcast Series. We're here to inform, inspire, and support. I am the host, Twana Anderson, the Community Engagement Director. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in. Here, we invite our partners to join us for a conversation about their organization's service to the community, challenges they may be facing, and their future plans, all while we weave throughout ideas to help you have an impact on a child's mental health journey. Let's get some housekeeping things done very, very quickly. We are streaming this episode live, as we do all of our episodes, but it will be available anytime you feel like learning something about children's mental health and the community that serves them. If you enjoy this video, please help spread the word. This is just our third podcast series, so we really appreciate your support. Also, during this episode, we may make reference to books, articles, videos, and other information supporting the knowledge that you'll gain during our time together today. You'll find those links below in the description, along with contact information for our guests, so you can stay connected. I also want to encourage you during the live stream to respectfully ask questions of our guests. That hasn't happened yet. People are not participating in our live chat on YouTube. But if you have a question, we can try and pose those questions to our guests if there is time for us to do so. So the Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health has a mission to promote and pursue optimal mental health from infancy to young adulthood. Every topic of this podcast is approached with an open and critical mind, exploring opportunities to view circumstances through a different lens. Being in this space means we advocate for all children to have equal access and opportunities to develop the skills to nourish their lives. We begin to help others remove their blinders while we're also being challenged to remove our own. We need to see other people and appreciate their perspectives, perhaps even learn from their journeys. Engaging with community is what I do for MACMH, and this podcast is something new that we're doing to share our partners with you. We are a professional development organization. That is our jam. We provide excellent educational opportunities to providers and educators, offering continuing education online in our training series or through one of our two leading annual children's mental health conferences. We also recognize the need to provide our resources in a different and unique way that reaches everyone. I always like to add right here, you may have thought to yourselves, a podcast is not very unique, and you are correct. But whether you're a parent, a caregiver, a relative, or a friend of a child or young person who may struggle with their emotional awareness, we hope that sharing our resources with you in this way will become a valuable tool for you. I am so honored for this opportunity to collaborate with the School of Social Work, located within the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Minnesota. My hope is that the conversation we have during this 5-part series will expose someone new to this career path, inspire you to learn more about the field of social work, share what you learned during this episode with a young person in your life that this could be a great fit for, who may already have a heart for service. So that's kind of what I hope to do over these next several weeks with you. Our special guests for this episode are the leaders of the University of Minnesota School of Social Work, whose PhD and master's programs promote the knowledge, skill, and values of the social work profession. Their youth development leadership program supports an expanded understanding of young people in the United States and internationally. Their undergraduate programs in youth studies, family violence prevention, and social justice support and promote ways of valuing, living, and working in the world that further social development department leadership. Their mission at the School of Social Work is simple: We practice what we teach: leadership, scholarship, social justice, and community engagement. We'll set the stage for the series, speaking with this amazing panel of exceptional leaders today. It's important to recognize the tremendous advantage it is to have phenomenal leadership so we can trust in the folks who are teaching us and our young people. All right, I always feel like I have too much to say at the beginning, but I also want to make sure that I lay the groundwork for what you can expect. So I want to begin by introducing the school's director and associate professor, Joan Blakey. Let's take a quick look at a video courtesy of Care 11 News that introduced her to the Twin Cities. So let me just share my screen here. All right, I hope everyone can see it, and here we go. All right, let's go ahead and bring in Dr. Blakey. Hi, how are you
Hi,
doing today? Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And the whole team. I'm really
Listen,
excited to be here.
I love how well the video introduced you to Minnesota. And I can really appreciate the journey it took for you to arrive here at the U. What's missing? What's missing from that story that you want to share?
Well, I think it's just reminding people that it was me coming home. So this is where I was born and raised. I had left for about 20 years. And so it was really me coming home and coming back to a place that has meant so much to me. I'm a first generation student, and I really feel like I grew up on this campus. Where the school's located is in St. Paul. And so my first dorm was in Bailey Hall, which is on the St. Paul campus. And so as an undergraduate, I lived in Bailey Hall. And then, coming back for my master's, which was actually on the Minneapolis campus, our cohort was the last cohort before we moved to St. Paul. But it really was such a transformative experience for me. And I just cannot imagine my life without my education. And so I think being able to come back to the school and to really think about, help to figure out what that next iteration is going to be, was really exciting for me. But it was really the opportunity to give back to a program that had given so much to me.
That's awesome. I'm assuming that you've got a book in the works. I always tell people that there's
Yes.
a book.
Yeah,
Everyone has a book in their life. I
absolutely.
cannot wait to read your story.
Thank you.
All right, we have a lot to talk about. So let's bring in the rest of the team. So I have this really fancy thing that I'm going to share here real quick so that while I bring everyone in. All right, did I get everyone? Did I get everyone? I think so. I think so. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Thumbs up or just fine, Molly?
Doing well.
Just fine.
Great to see you.
Happy Wednesday. Wednesdays are always a great day of the week. All right. Our remaining guests today are Joe, Lynette, Ross, Molly, and Suzanne. I'm going to let y'all kind of introduce yourselves. Tell us about your why in choosing your career, kind of your journey to the present, and what your role is within the school. Joe, we're going to start with you. You are the Associate Director of the School of Social Work and a professor there. Your areas of interest are social work practice in healthcare settings, psychological aspects, and I'm going to let you tell the rest. But will you just kind of include what I did learn is that your psychological aspects of end-stage renal disease. That was so fascinating to me when I was reading about that. So as you introduce yourself, can you be a little bit more specific on how that became a part of your journey?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Marighi. I'm an associate professor in the school. I'm also the associate director. I came to the University of Minnesota in 2013, so I'm starting my 12th year at the U. And my journey, actually, it's an interesting zigzagging journey. I was going to be and wanted to be a psychologist, so I majored in psychology and life science as an undergrad, and then went to grad school in clinical psychology. And it was there I discovered that the work that I wanted to do wasn't perfectly aligned with clinical psychology. So I took a couple years off, gained some research experience, and decided to pursue my studies, my master's and PhD in social work or social welfare. And so it was really there during my studies in California that I discovered I had a real passion for healthcare and specifically social work and healthcare. And at that time, I was practicing as a social worker, specifically in HIV services in San Francisco. And this was at a time of the HIV epidemic that was seeing so many people dying so quickly. Many of my friends passed away. My colleagues, even my colleagues at the hospital, some of them died within a year of me meeting them because they had HIV and they developed HIV-related illnesses that took their lives. So I was very much interested in chronic health and specific chronic health, chronic disease, and also the psychosocial aspects associated with illness. And so after I completed my degree in social welfare, I did a postdoc that allowed me to enhance my research even more before pursuing an academic career. And is when I was an assistant professor just starting off, a social worker who was employed at a dialysis clinic in San Jose, California, wrote a letter to me, old-fashioned letter, typed out on paper, and said, I would really like to do a study, but I don't remember any of the research that I learned in my master's program. I ran into some of your students at a job fair. Would you be willing to spare some time and help me? And I thought, sure, come on. So we set up a time, and it was just synergy. We got along so well, and we both had a real passion for critically ill individuals that we collaborated on a project together, specifically looking at the role of social work in the provision of care for people who have renal disease or kidney disease. And kind of like the rest is history. That was the early 2000s. And ever since that time, I've been involved in work that looks at specifically how social workers can help people on dialysis live better and healthier lives. I do a lot of lecturing for the National Kidney Foundation on this particular topic. And have really branched out a little bit more recently to look at how social workers can collaborate with other professionals like nurses and pharmacists and physicians in a more interprofessional way, so that we all work together, closely together, to help improve the outcomes, the health outcomes of people who are dealing with either a new illness or dealing with a chronic illness. So that's kind of like my journey in a nutshell. And I'm really pleased to be here at the University of Minnesota, because the university, as a research university and a powerhouse in the state, has an amazing health sciences division. And so it allows me to collaborate very closely with people in the School of Nursing and in the School of Pharmacy, which really is, as you would say, my jam. So that's kind of like my background.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The reason why it was so interesting to me, Joe, is that I have an aunt who is just a few years older than me that had kidney failure many, many years ago. I've had two of my other aunts donate a kidney to my one of my younger aunties. The first one she rejected after a few years. The second one has been awesome. So I have that connection to my family. So that's why I really wanted you to dig a little bit deeper. I guess I never thought about how social work would connect to something like that. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, let's go to Lynette, who is a professor and director in the PhD program, director of graduate studies. Lynette, your areas of interest are family violence, intimate partner violence, child maltreatment, mental and behavioral health. You're also an editor-in-chief of the Journal of Family Violence, which is a peer-reviewed publication committed to disseminating research. So as you share your journey, will you also explain how your curriculum is connected to the work that you do as an editor?
Oh, wow. Okay. So my journey into social work, which is what I think you want me to start with, I think for many of us, and we talk about this with our students, I mean, the profession of social work is more of a calling than necessarily a choice. So for me, that's kind of how it started. I knew very early on that I wanted to do something to work to combat violence against children. And that just kind of evolved over time. My dad was a social worker. I never knew him in that capacity. Growing up, he was a professor at a small liberal arts college and the director of their social work program. All I ever saw him do was grading papers, and I knew I wanted like nothing to do with that. So, but there was something about the way that he spoke about what happened in schools of social work and in social work programs and in social work practica that just kind of resonated with me, sort of, I think, subconsciously. So I, long story short, I got my master's when I was 22 years old. I don't recommend that. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was then suddenly a supervisor of 5 other people in a psychiatric state hospital back in North Dakota. I was running groups for people who were experiencing addiction, for co-occurring disorders, for adolescents in long-term locked residential care. And within that, I then was asked to start running groups for people who had experienced intimate partner violence or people who had been maltreated as children who, as they had grown up, had really not worked through a lot of those issues. And that was kind of, creating other challenges in their life, addiction, arrest, all sorts of things. And so that's where I really started, I think, honing my particular interest in family violence. And a lot of my research work then is in child maltreatment, but also more probably in recent years that has really transitioned into intimate partner violence, and particularly adults who experience intimate partner violence, both people who experience it and people who use violence against an intimate partner. Related to that, I do a lot of things kind of similarly that Joe was mentioning. A lot of my work is, I don't stay in IPV, in intimate partner violence or IPV serving kind of agencies, although I have amazing collaborators in the Twin Cities who do that work. But I do a lot of my work is in systems and services that surround family violence. So really working with child welfare professionals to understand what it is like to experience intimate partner violence, working with people in the criminal and legal system, working with people in healthcare. So really thinking about how can I really get people in other service areas that surround aspects of family violence to better understand the very complex dynamics of family violence so they can develop better prevention and intervention services.
It's definitely a complex conversation, but I look forward to talking with you a little bit more, Lynette, and learning some intimate details about the work that you do. So thank you for sharing that. We'll move on to Ross, who I feel like you've had a smile on your face ever since you've come on. So I really, really love that. You are the Associate Professor and Director of the Youth Development Leadership Program. Your areas of interest are deepening and enriching understanding about youth work practice and education, evaluation studies, participatory models with youth work and youth development. I love all of that. What has been your journey, and why are these interests the focus of your work, Ross?
Well, hello. It's a pleasure to be here. And, when you get to hang out with a group like this, you just smile a lot. So my journey, I always talk about starting with this incredible mentor I had as an undergraduate. And as an undergraduate, I really thought I was going to go into the Foreign Service. And so I was doing international relations and poli-sci, economics, and history, alongside doing a lot of work with young people in the community. And this mentor of mine was talking to me as I was towards the end of my undergraduate career, was asking me about my experience of the semester and what I was doing. And at one point, she just stopped me and said, "Hey, I want to make an observation. When you talk about your coursework, I feel like you glaze over and just start telling me what people have told you to say. But when you talk about the work you do in the community, you just get so excited. And you can just see that it is something that is so part of who you are, right?" And as a good mentor, she just looked at me and goes, "You should think about that." Right? And so when I graduated, I took a real different direction. And I applied and got hired at a transitional housing and kind of homeless shelter, managing volunteers, but also then quickly saw a real need to work with the children in the transitional housing program. There was very little programming for them. This was back in the late 80s. And I just organized and kind of thought about how do you create opportunities that really allow young people to see their talents and their skills and to explore really what they're passionate about, which, as someone who'd never worked in that field, I didn't know that was radical. Everybody else wanted to come in and treat the kids. I wanted to come in and say, "What do you want to do today? What do you want to know more about?" And then found ways to make that happen. It's kind of one of those things, like if you're not told what you can't do, you just do it. And so I did that for a couple of years and moved further and further into youth work and became a full-time youth worker in my next job, and was doing that pretty, like, I thought I hit my stride, was doing well, and was working in schools and in communities. And a lot of the questions I would get from especially teachers is they would kind of start by saying, "Wow, you're really good at this. Can you come help me do this?" And then they'd often ask, "So what's your training?" And I'd describe I'm a political science, international relations. And they'd look at me then and go, "Well, how are you qualified to do this work?" And I kind of go, "You just said I did it well. So clearly I'm qualified. What does my degree have to do with this?" And so I looked around and I was like, the qualification that would answer my skeptics would be to go get a master's of social work degree, because then no one would ask me if I qualified to work with people. And that's what I did. I went and got a social work degree, and through that process, met faculty and was supervised in my field by a terrific set of colleagues who constantly talked about if you really want to know what's going on, you have to work with those most directly impacted by the issues. And given my history, I started to think about, well, I wonder what young people say about what are the biggest issues that they're facing. And it probably was my naivete, but I was like, wow, how they describe their problems are really different than how the teachers describe their problems or how the social workers describe their problems. And I just kept going and working with young people, and would then start to create stuff that addressed major issues that were in their lives, to the point where principals of the schools would call me in and say, how the heck did student disciplinary problems drop 30%? And I'd say, oh, the student council worked on that, right? They set up peer mediators. They're training teachers to de-escalate conflicts. They created a teacher appreciation day because they figured at the end of the school year, teachers also get tired and don't feel appreciated. And they had this hypothesis that if teachers were appreciated, maybe they would respond better to students when they were not having a great day. And the principal's like, oh my gosh, well, could you do that again? I'm like, well, no, but the student council could. So, and it just kind of reinforced the message. It's amazing how much we want to give credit to someone else for the work that other people do. And so a lot of what I do in my practice and in my research right now is to try to elevate the voices, especially of young people, as well as create and really think about systems and processes, right? So my current work really is looking at how do we transition leadership roles that are then more open to young people, especially in youth-serving organizations. So the organizations that work with the communities that we serve are also led by the communities that we serve. And that's a big focus of what I do in my classes, what I do in my research, and it all kind of comes together with my community partnerships.
I love that. One of the things that I've learned since coming to MACMH is how to look at children differently and their behaviors, and not ask what's wrong with you, but switch our perspectives and begin to ask, all right, what is this behavior trying to tell me? And then how do I address that? Instead of looking for something wrong within them, let's just figure out how we can find common ground and see, why they're behaving this way, because there's always a reason. So that's awesome. And I'm really looking forward to our future episode where we get to sit down with students and alumni and talk about their experiences. So that's going to be pretty amazing too. Thank you, Ross, for sharing that. I appreciate it. All right, Molly, you're next. You are the Director of Undergraduate Studies and Senior Teaching Specialist. As I learned about what motivates the work that you're doing, what stood out is the feeling that you intentionally pursue connection with students in your programs. So as you talk about your journey with the audience, please include why bonding with students is a priority for you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So I probably have a little bit of a different path to youth studies and certainly to leadership than maybe the other people here. So I started at the University of Minnesota in a college called the General College, which was closed, but that was sort of the open access college at the university. And in particular, I was in a program called Commanding English, and our mission in Commanding English was to support refugee and immigrant students who had graduated from local area high schools, but needed sort of like a transition year into their college work. And I also taught some classes at a couple of local high schools. And I think when I really went into that work, as a first-time teacher, I had a lot of tools about like the English language and how to support students. But what I really realized is that the students, as recent refugees who were coming into these classes with a lot of aspirations, but also dealing with a lot of things, that what we really ended up doing in that program and in my classrooms, I hope, was just sort of creating spaces where we also just really, and I know this sounds kind of hokey, but where we really loved each other, actually, the students and the teachers, and that we created this like community where people could be themselves and also bring kind of some of the challenges that they were facing that didn't really have to do with learning English for college, but that we were really caring for each other. And I think that's So then the university did decide to close the general college, I think in 2008, and create this new structure of CHD. And then I came to youth studies in 2016 because what I saw here was a place where people were doing that same kind of work with students, right? Where we were bringing in, letting the pedagogy be a place about creating community. And we're certainly teaching things to our students. There's curriculum that's really important and about youth and about supporting youth, but we're also creating communities in our classrooms and modeling that so that when our students leave our program, they're able to have experience of being in a community where they were, loved and accepted and can create those communities themselves. And so I saw that kind of work going on, and Youth Studies was kind enough to also accept me as a faculty person. And I came here and I teach. I work with a lot of students. I teach in a lot of different capacities in our college. I work with our first year students, and I teach students that are in our major. I teach students that are outside of our major. But I think that really modeling that idea of community and being a classroom as being a space where people can be themselves and can experience acceptance and also experience, as at the same time that they're learning these concepts, is something that we do really well in youth studies. And so then as I taught here for a number of years, then I was asked to take on the director of undergraduate studies role, which I really see as a kind of service role where other people have done this administrative work and I've benefited from it. And so I really thought, I think it's my turn to step into the role and to try and provide that kind of service and communication to the college about our programs. And so that's how I ended up here. So thank you.
Listen, there's a common theme throughout everyone so far, how your call for service was really encouraged by your experiences there where you are serving now. So I just think that's amazing, Molly. Belonging is very important. And these are some of the buzzwords that I'm starting to learn as I'm, diving deeper into mental health. But belonging is really important. And it sounds like you make it very easy and comfortable for children to feel like for your students to feel like they belong. I'm sure that they appreciate that. So thank you, Molly, for sharing that. I appreciate that. Suzanne, last but not least, the director of the Master of Social Work program. You like doing anything outdoors in nature, preferably near our beautiful Minnesota waters, anywhere. I love that you shared something personal in your areas of interest. I think you were probably the only one. I have a request that I ask during interviews. So tell us something about yourself that we wouldn't find on your resume. That answer sometimes provide insight on how people view themselves. So the fact that you chose to give something personal, I think that was pretty awesome. I like the boundary waters. And it looks like one of your stops was in Tennessee. My dad lives in Tennessee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I spent 10 years in Nashville. So that is probably, I consider Tennessee my second home. So love it there.
I love it there too.
Yeah.
I make sure that I get down to visit him a few times a year now that I'm so close. I drive and I stay a couple of weeks. It's the great thing of being able to work remotely sometimes and having an awesome executive director that supports me doing that kind of stuff. But anyway, Suzanne, go ahead and tell us about your journey.
So let's see. So the way I ended up in social work is gosh, this is taking me back a bit. So I am the daughter of a Lebanese immigrant who came to America, did not intend to stay, but we ended up here after the Lebanese civil war started. And I grew up just seeing how people in my own community were being treated, and that really led me to get involved with different movements, different organizations that were fighting injustice. And that eventually led me into wanting to find some sort of career that where I could actually channel that energy into something good, so that I could take kind of that anger and that sadness that I was experiencing and actually make something of that. And if you talk to a lot of our social work students, a lot of them will find their way to social work because they have experienced some sort of trauma, or they have experienced some sort of injustice, or they are tired of seeing injustice or seeing trauma, and they want some sort of way to fight that, or make some good out of what has happened to them or what has happened in their community. And so ended up finding social work and have been a social worker for over 20 years now. Was originally a social work practitioner. And then in 2018, really found myself not happy with the way, or with what I was seeing in social work practice. Was becoming a little disillusioned with what I was seeing in nonprofits, especially. I think we talk a good game as social workers sometimes, and we're not always in positions of power. A lot of times we are the ones who are, the ones who are working directly with clients, but we are not always the ones who are selected to serve on boards. We're not the ones who are the executive directors. We're not always the ones who are in the positions to make the decisions, and decided that I really wanted to be in a place where I could hopefully help social workers become leaders, so that they could eventually end up in those positions where they were the ones making the decisions and having the influence over how organizations were running. And so ended up going into higher education and leaving practice behind. So that is kind of my journey in a very, that's the abbreviated version of my social work journey, I would say.
That's awesome. It's for me, it's really important to establish the professionalism, the knowledge base that the leaders of this school have. And if I didn't say thank you yet, let me stop one more time to just say thank you. I am so honored that y'all carved out time to be here with me today and to talk about the work that you're so passionate about doing. Let me just really, really, really fast just say that you're listening to a Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health podcast, leading with compassion, knowledge, and support. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, follow, share, all those great things. Turn on notifications so you'll get them for future episodes. I really appreciate it. All right. So it was fairly simple to design the topics for this podcast. They are integral aspects of your school's directives, the mission of the School of Social Work, leadership and scholarship, social justice, community engagement, researching mental health. I can't wait to dig into that later on. And then prepare to build a better world. So, Joe, let me bring it to you. Will you share just a little bit about the School of Social Work's history and how those pillars set the course for what it means to be a student in your respected school?
Okay, I'll start with the history and I'll give an abbreviated version given our time. The school started in 1917. And one thing to know about the school, that it has always been sort of part of a college at the University of Minnesota. So from and that was 107 years ago. So to do the math. So from 1917 to, starting in 1917, the school was housed in the College of Liberal Arts. Okay. And then it's remained in that college for quite a long time until 1983. And then in 1983, the school moved into the College of Human Ecology and remained there until 2006. And then it moved to the College of Education and Human Development, where it has been since 2007. Okay. And so when the University of Minnesota established the training course for social work and civil work in 1917, this was like during World War I. And the first director was Arthur J. Todd, who was a professor of sociology, who had been an active organizer and the first president of the Minneapolis Council of Social Agencies. And before the social work program was established, Todd, the director, recruited the cooperation of local social service leaders. And so we have sort of our roots here in sociology, which was interesting. And I had to do some research in preparation for today's podcast. So this was enlightening for me. The first degree offered by the training course for social work and civil work was in 1918. It was a Master of Arts degree. And then in moving forward a little bit, in the fall of 1992, Professor Stuart Chapin begins his long tenure as chairman of sociology and director of of social work. And this tenure ended in 1949, so after World War II. The Masters of Art in Social Work was changed to the Master of Social Work degree, which we currently offer. That change happened in 1948. So we have now a longstanding tradition of offering the Master of Social Work degree at the university. So I think like 76 years now. And so we have a Masters of Social Work program that has always had a direct service focus with a particular emphasis on child welfare, in addition to an administrative community service track. And this program was first accredited in 1973, and that was the first year when programs of social work can be accredited by the Council on Social Work Education. In addition to our master's program, we have a doctoral program that started around 1946, and it is among one of the oldest doctoral programs of social work in the United States. So we have really proud of that. And as we know from our conversation with Molly and Ross, that we have a master's degree program, a master's of education program in youth development leadership. And that program started in 2007. And the first director was Lisa Kimball. And then the year after, in 2008, the school started to offer a Bachelor of Science degree in youth studies. And that program was directed by Michael Bazerman at the time, and it was co-designed here with us today, and Lisa Kimball. So today the school brings together social work in the master's program and the PhD program. It also brings together youth studies and youth development leadership. So it's a nice synergy of programs that we have. So
yeah, that's awesome. Go ahead, Joe. Was there something else you wanted to add? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at this moment.
All right. One of the things, so Minnesota is not my home, not where I originated, but I've been here for so many years. I'm even a retired Minneapolis firefighter. So I consider, this my community. And I'm very, very proud to say that I live here because of the community that we have. And I think that Minnesota is really always a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to innovation and doing wonderful things. So understanding the history of the School of Social Work, how embedded it is in the University of Minnesota, and that it's one of the oldest in the country, I think that's very exciting for people who are thinking about doing this work and having it right here where they can take full advantage of. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that. So let's take some time to connect children to our conversation. When I think about what a social worker is or traditionally has been, and what they do, I know what has to be the bare minimum, right? They work with children and families who are having difficulties or challenges in their life, but I'm really not clear what that means or what that entails. So Suzanne and Molly, can you guys kind of team up and share how you define what a social worker is, what they do and what they don't do, and where could we expect to find them working?
So, wow, social work is a really broad profession. I think that's the first thing to know. And so you can find us in a lot of different settings. You might find us in an emergency room doing discharge planning. So if a family comes in, let's say, and a child is being released from the ER or the hospital. We might be helping plan different resources to make sure that the family has food, that the family has insurance, that the family has follow-up wraparound services. In a school setting, we might be making sure that the family has access to all of those things, and then also following up if a child is missing a lot of school, the social worker might be reaching out to contact the family to see what's going on, if there's something happening, if there's a reason why those absences are occurring. Is there an issue with transportation? Is there something going on with the family? Is there an illness? Something like that. We might be in the library in case someone comes in and needs help with, an issue with intimate partner violence. If someone needs resources in the community, we're stationed in police stations to help de-escalate situations, go out with different teams of officers. We work in, child welfare, making sure that children are, if they're not able to remain in their household, that they are getting the services that they need. We're working with families to make sure that they are getting the services that they need so that they can be reunited with families. I mean, there's really no limit to where we are. We sometimes are providing one-on-one services, therapeutic services. And then at other times we are also working more at the macro level. And so we're involved in policy, we're involved in changing laws, we're involved with community organizing. One of the benefits of this profession is that we are trained to practice in a lot of different areas. And so there's really no limit to where we could be practicing. I don't know if any of my colleagues have any other anything else to share to add to that.
Absolutely. Anyone, Molly?
I mean, I don't want to jump in and talk about youth work, but I will say that our youth studies major doesn't actually prepare students to be social workers, but we are preparing them to be youth workers, which is a little bit of a different role. But you could see our students, I think, doing a lot of things as well in really different roles. So sometimes our students might be working in community settings, working specifically with kids or young people. Sometimes they might be working, in sort of after school or programs that help young people connect with the natural environment. Sometimes students have really expressed desire to work in the criminal justice system and like youth diversion programs, or even, I think for a while when I first came, we had a really strong cohort of people who wanted to work as youth pastors. And so we did. And like, I think a lot of it is also the things that Ross was describing in his origin story, right? Of like noticing what's going on with the kids in this setting and how can we serve them, and having this kind of orientation towards kids that rejects these kind of deficit lenses or deficit understandings of kids, or sees them as the problem and really tries to challenge some of that thinking and create spaces for kids where it's kind of kids can be part of solving their own problems or part of just being creative. And so a lot of our courses might focus on kind of the scholarly understandings of kids and learning how to reject some of those lenses. But then we also have really practical classes. And then I would say some of us teach like literature classes about youth, which I think really connects to this idea of imagination and trying to imagine a better world for young people and what could that look like, and engaging students in thinking about that. And I think for our students, that's what really drives their work, is they want a better world for kids. Yeah. They want to be part of that. And so Their youth studies degree might qualify them to start working in a community organization. A lot of them do that. It might also prepare them to apply for a graduate program with a focus on youth, but I would say that's kind of what our students do.
If I could add.
Yes.
All right. First, I have to apologize. Joe, I totally fed you misinformation. The YDO program started in 1993 with the first director as Joyce Walker, and came to the School of Social Work in 2007 with the first director at the School of Social Work, Lisa Kimball, and then Jerry Stein. I want to talk about, I think, Molly, youth studies is a both and, right? We absolutely prepare people into the field of youth worker, and we prepare people if they choose to go into the field of social work. And part of that is because social work, in my vision, is a very broad profession, right? And it absolutely addresses the situations and concerns that Suzanne kind of mentioned about, and I would talk about, like, how do you both address immediate problems and needs and ameliorate kind of community concerns, and as Molly was talking about, like, how do you build the imagination and co-create different contexts, worlds, and systems, right? And I think that combines both that ability to address trauma and problems, and on the other end, to really educate in community-based, experiential, kind of co-creative ways. And I would say youth studies was really geared towards that spectrum of social work that's about the co-creation. That's about how do we generate new ideas on how young people could exist in the world. And how might that be a role that social work has always fostered, but how do we make that centered in a program and in a degree, rather than just alongside a wide variety of other practice models that exist. And so youth studies really leaned into saying, we really want to emphasize and invite people to really be co-creators with populations and communities, including young people, and see what new worlds we can create. And I think that has been a huge advantage, right, for the larger community context across Minnesota. Because you have graduates every year going out there going, I think we can create something really awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where the literature classes are really important, because you need more than skills, right? You also need that imagination. You need to think about possibilities that people haven't and put things together in ways that is new and regenerative and imaginative, so that issues can be prevented, not just addressed.
I got goosebumps with you speaking, Ross. I feel the passion and excitement that you have for this work. And thank you for separating that in my mind for me, social work and youth work. I didn't realize that there is a difference there, but it's still under the same umbrella, Lynette. Am I thinking about that correctly?
Ross is giving the thumbs up, so I'm going to say yes. You are absolutely on track.
Well, and I'd also say, Lynette, you participate in all the meetings, right? I mean, I think there's a distinction that is without from the same foundation, right? So, I mean, we can talk about it as a distinction. I would rather talk about it as a continuum of social work.
Okay, right? I like that.
I do the distinction only because I believe and fully invested that a social worker is a licensed, credentialed, right, category of profession. And youth work is much more fluid than that. And so I don't like to talk about youth workers as social workers, because I do think social work has a higher ethical and a higher professional bounds that they have to meet to fit into that category, or to fit in that professional category. Where youth workers, right, I mean, they are the ones that get to join, play with learning, with exploration, and with imagination. And I think that's a wonderful, we are very happy to be part of the social work family of practices.
Yeah. That's
And that
awesome.
was the distinction that I was drawing too. I wasn't mostly in the professional preparation.
I've learned that what that means, it's like there are no acronyms. Like to me, in my head, I'm learning that in this community engagement department that I'm really trying to cultivate and grow, that it's kind of my job to bridge the gap between the professionals and those of us who don't know what all the acronyms are. And so that's always kind of my goal here with this podcast, is to bring this wonderful knowledge that you all have that really is something that we really can't even imagine or think about or wrap our brains around, but it's still something that we need to know. And you bring it right down to our level so that we can get excited about it. And so this is awesome. I just love speaking with you all. Dr. Blakey, what is the importance of understanding children's mental health development for social workers?
I think the importance is some of what my colleagues have talked about in terms of really trying to make a difference in the lives of children and families. I think the importance is that we want our work to be meaningful. We want our work to have an effect, right? We want to leave communities and families better off than when we found them. And so I think that is the goal. We want to understand them. We want to understand what they need. We want them to be driving the process as opposed to us telling families what they need. It's completely a social justice issue. It's a access issue. It's all of that, right? And so I just think that social work is one of those professions that I love because it really gets in there with the families and really is intended to meet families where they're at and then help families get to the next place, right? That is defined by them, and gain access to resources, help them to be, like I said, better than they were when we, started working with them.
That's why I appreciate the infant and early childhood mental health space, because it just automatically brings the parents along with the child, because you can't send your 3-year-old off to get therapy on their own or to get that kind of help. So is there any kind of emphasis on early childhood development or mental development within the School of Social Work? And it could be no connection. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is a connection. Certainly within child welfare. And I think, I didn't talk a lot about my research, but my focus is on the parents. And it really is from the belief that what you just said, that, we oftentimes will talk about, children, but children are a part of families, and families are a part of communities, and communities are part of, and environments in the world. And so that's really what social work is about, is that we're not just about helping individuals, but it's also understanding those individuals within the context of the larger systems in which they're involved in. And so I don't think that we can help children without helping families. I don't think we can help communities without helping, families. So I agree. I think that part of what we're talking about is about, in some ways, broadening the definition. And what does well-being, mental health, all of those things mean and an encompass. And it's not just one aspect, but it's all of these aspects, right? It's financial, it's emotional, it's psychological, it's physical, it's social, it's relational. And so, again, that's what I really love about social work, is that it really does allow us to do all of that.
I think I appreciate that about social work as well. Only because as I am learning our fields, all of the different ways that people are trained to help take care of our children and nurture their mental health and their mental well-being. To me, it's hard to separate the parents. And I think that somehow that should be a factor even as our children get older, and not just to have a social worker in your high school that maybe you see once a year, a school year or something, and only when you get in trouble, right? I love that. I love that. Go ahead, Ross.
I mean, it's something really.
I love that you raised your hand.
Really quick, I'm a very good student. I want to add something kind of off of what Joan was talking about, and I think the thing that I find the most inspirational about social work is really the holistic understanding of person, right? And there's a phrase we use in youth development and youth work, which is, community is the context of development and health. And I think social work leans into that really deeply, and understands that treatment and health are often two different things that are related, but not synonymous. And social work really does look at how do we foster and uplift the whole, knowing that it's all interconnected, that you can't, and I think like the expertise in this room right now, right? You can't address violence by just dealing with the person who's violent. You can't address health by just dealing with the illness. That you really do have to talk about the holistic piece of it, and recognize that people grow up not in, isolation, but in a community. And it's really the community that we have to foster and build. And we know that is a direct connection to children's mental well-being.
Yeah. And as a retired firefighter, I feel like that was kind of my first introduction to children and the issues that they face. And I feel like they are the part of our society that doesn't have a voice. Even as we talk about the elections that are coming up, very rarely are we talking about children and what they need. And for me, it would just be nice if we could have the kind of country where, it's like military defense. Whatever you need for children, we're just going to find a way to take care of it. You don't have to ask. You don't have to beg us. We understand that children are our future. So I would really like to talk about, as we are continuing our conversation through the next several weeks, more of how we get there. Like, this is a really great time for us to get to know y'all better, to understand what the School of Social Work offers to people, to get people a little bit excited about doing a little bit of research and learning more about y'all. But as we continue on through this series of conversations, I want to definitely talk about some real tangible solutions that y'all are working on. I love that you're bringing students in, this co-creating with students, young people who are creating safe spaces and wonderful future for people who are coming after them. So there's just so much to talk about. It's already been an hour. See, that's why I put an hour and a half on your calendars. So I want to move towards wrapping up our conversation today with the teaching philosophy of the School of Social Work, which is to offer a high quality education that instills in its graduates the capability to incorporate and apply social work values, knowledge, and skills to advance practice, participate in human needs in a rapidly changing society, to promote and offer programs and services that meet those needs, and to use scholarly inquiry in advancing professional law. Listen, when I have dug through your website, and I just love the way, I don't know who did it, who created the words, but I just am excited just going through your website and learning more about what y'all do. So the teaching philosophy of the School of Social Work is to promote a community of cooperative learning. Lynette, please just talk a little bit about what that means to you.
So I'll speak from the doctoral side of things. So we have an amazing cohort of young scholars, and kind of using that collaborative learning and that cooperative, kind of dialogue, is we run the majority of our courses as seminars. And so everybody in there is someone who is a learner, and everybody in there is somebody who can impart knowledge and in other ways to everybody else. And so When I'm in a doctoral class, I'm not standing up there talking and kind of lecturing to them. It is inviting all voices, both those that are kind of resonating in a collective way, and others who are saying, none of this gels with me in any way, shape, or form. And it's for these exact reasons. And so we have this wonderful just exchange of ideas and a building of knowledge that I think is not, I'm only speaking from the doctoral side of things, but I think that everybody on this screen and the majority of people who are teaching in our school kind of operate that way. And so we're creating space to allow for, just a wonderful exchange of dialogues, knowing that we are all learners and teachers, and that we are all on a path toward learning more as we go.
Juana, we can't hear you.
Look, I muted myself as I was drinking and I unmute myself. But I was just saying that I love that. I think that cooperative learning should be on a t-shirt for sure. Anytime that you can get cooperation above competition, even though that's kind of, American way of doing things. But I love that. I love that. So the next one I want to talk about a little bit is to build a learning environment that continually responds to the needs of the profession, the state, and beyond. Joe, I want you to talk about that one.
Okay, to build a learning environment that responds to the needs of the community. I think something that we do in the School of Social Work is we critically assess our curriculum, and that's an ongoing process. Because if we want to be nimble, if we need to be nimble, if we want to be responsive to the needs of the community, we need to take the time to reflect on what we're doing and what we're teaching and how we're teaching the topics, to make sure that we are current, to make sure that we're doing in the best way that educates our students. And in addition to that, we have to think about who we hire to teach, because we have faculty who are on the tenure track or tenured, and then we have faculty who have contracts. And so we have all different types of educators in the school, from those who stay around for 20 years in full-time positions to practitioners who come and sort of grace us with their knowledge and their skill and impart that knowledge and skill to our students, because they are actually boots on the ground, doing the work, working in communities, working with individuals and groups. And they're coming to our school and sharing that incredible knowledge with our students. So the way we do that is we reflect on what we do. We make sure that we're responding to the needs of the community. We're figuring out how to do that, because it's not always an easy process, but we have to be critical of what we do. And then to implement any curriculum that we have to be mindful of who we hire and who we put in the classroom to facilitate the cooperative learning that we talked about. And we do that in part by hiring people who are actually practicing. And on the flip side, we have people here who are doing research and cutting edge research and sharing that important knowledge as well, because we have to do things that are based on sort of cumulative knowledge, experience, evidence, and so on. So hopefully that answered your question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Co-creation is the key. Communication. I love how, your environment is not just be created, but sustained and even reevaluated, and how it seems to just continue to grow. Ross, the next one I want to talk about is the use of technology to improve teaching and learning. Technology is one of those things, especially now with AI and all. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen with AI? How do y'all infuse technology in the way that you teach and the way that your students are learning?
Well, I think we got a crash course in 2020 on how to do that. And I am willing to ask anybody else to pipe in, but in my classes and in my work, right, there's like the foundation, right? We have classroom management systems, and that allows for us to have ongoing and regular kind of interaction with students about assignments, courses, questions. It also builds an online community among students so they can ask each other questions, right? I've learned that if you've created that discussion post within your Canvas site where students can ask a question to the group, most often another student responds way before I get there. And the response is correct. So there's that piece of how do you also use technology to assist with that belonging, connection, and community building. And then there's the advantages of the technology currently is, at least for me, just exciting in the sense of I can have community partners from Northern Ireland come to a class. I can have people from Croatia that I've worked in. I can have people from around the globe tune in and share experiences and ideas as well as guest lecture at times that really is meaningful and that matters. And then there's a wonderful array of technologies that really do support kind of students' self-directed learning. And that kind of ability to interface both with the library resources that we have at the University of Minnesota, which are, I think, world-class, truly profound, and the different technologies in the classroom that allow for that integration of really up to the minute kind of understandings that as they emerge. What else have people done to kind of amplify, or how has technology allowed the learning and teaching in our classes to be amplified? I know Molly has a lot of experience with this. So.
Thanks, Russ. I think you captured a lot of it. I would say that some things that I think some of our teachers are doing would be about including, I think, technology like podcasts, like this podcast or podcasting that lets people talk about their own communities in like a more open access way can be really useful in classrooms where you can include more voices and people are kind of like, I teach a lot in the literature class where people are doing a lot of storytelling and podcasts that maybe wouldn't be published in a book, but is still really important for our content. And I think also one thing I would say about the pedagogy and the learning platforms is I think in the School of Social Work, we're really interested in using technology to improve our teaching and to improve the student experience, but we have to always balance that with creating something that's deep and meaningful. So there's a pedagogy expert that I follow who talks about, not creating something, not letting the technology necessarily make us create something that we think is meaningful just because it's the new technology, but to really let the pedagogy and the beliefs that we have drive our use of technology and then bring in technology when it supports. And I see that a lot with AI. Like you brought up AI, that AI is kind of a new thing that we have to deal with in education. But, one thing that we want to do with that is to guide our students to understand, like, still have to understand the audience that they're writing to. They still have to understand the genre that they're working in, and that, we can be in a meaningful conversation with them about the importance of developing those skills first before kind of just deploying these new technologies that are available to everyone. So that's kind of what I would add. I do think that we're kind of poised, we're really thoughtful, poised to deliver a lot of content online because of our thoughtfulness and our experience.
That's great. I'm one of those. I'm a Trekkie. There seems like you're either a Star Wars fan or you're Trekkie, and I'm a Trekkie. And I've always said that we're moving towards a world of Star Trek. Like, yes. When have you ever seen anyone open a door or turn on a light or have a real book? They've been reading from a tablet on Star Trek since I was a kid. In case y'all didn't know, like back in the days. And so I know that technology is intricately tied to our future. So it's really exciting to know that y'all embrace technology and kind of bring it into how you teach and how the students are learning. I think that's really important. I want to talk about one more thing, Joan, because
Mhm.
one of the other things that one of the other pillars you have is to increase access of diverse student populations and to promote social justice in a multicultural society. So, Joan, Suzanne, if you would like to address what that looks like within your School of Social Work and talk a little bit about those two things.
Yeah, no, I think, thank you, Tawana. I mean, one of the things I guess one of the caveats that I would want to say is that all of this is a work in progress. This is in many ways aspirational. And I think, sometimes as social workers, we fail to tell students that. I mean, we have, these values that guide our profession. But, sometimes we fall short. And so we are, on our way to trying to live them. And so when you think about access, I think about access not just about diversity. It's not enough to just get people here. But what do we do once they're here? How do we make them feel that they belong, that they see themselves reflected not only in in other students, but in the leadership, in the faculty and staff, that they see themselves reflected in the walls and in the curriculum. That we do embrace diversity of thought, diversity of technologies. That sometimes I think we are so anti change that we kind of get stuck. And I love AI. It's been fun. It's honestly been so fun playing around with it and seeing what it can do. And so rather than sort of closing the door on it, how can we use it and how can we help students to use it responsibly? And I think that's more of the conversation that we're trying to have, is that it is here to stay. Like many of the changes that have happened, as a part of COVID, there are some things that have changed our world that are here to stay. And so rather than fighting against them, how do we embrace them? And so I think that is what I think about when I think about access, is that, what do I do once the students are here? And certainly, being in this position, I'm asking those questions. Again, I was that first generation student. I was that student that had nobody that went. My uncle went to McAllister and got his bachelor's degree. So I was the second in my family to get my bachelor's degree, but the first to get my master's, the first to get my PhD. And I had no idea what I was doing in this environment. I made a lot of mistakes. And I think as our school, we're so proud of that we serve first gen students. We are really proud of that. And I continue to encourage us that we can't just say that. We then have to make our programs responsive to first gen students, because they may need something different than students, sort of traditional students. And so for me, diversity is bigger than just people who shows up, right? That when they show up, that they feel welcome, that they feel and see themselves reflected in all that we do, that they have a great experience, and that they leave with the knowledge and skills needed to change the world, whatever part of the world that they're trying, to impact. And so that is my goal, and that is my goal and mission in terms of being here. And it really is part of my own journey, which is why I feel so passionate about it.
And under Dr. Blakey's leadership.
Oh, I gotta stop muting my mic. But my glass is really my cup is noisy when I drink, so I try to be mindful of that. But now I have to be mindful to turn the mic back on. But I love all of your passions. I can definitely feel it. Did anyone want to add to that? What Joan spoke about?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, under Joan's leadership, we have also launched some different initiatives that we hadn't really explored before. So we administered a climate survey, a racial climate survey, a few years ago or 2 years ago, just to find out from our students what what their experiences were so that we could get a good idea of what they were experiencing, which, hasn't always been easy to look at some of the answers that they were providing, but we needed to hear from them what they were going through in order to help us understand what we needed to work on. And in addition to having an idea of, some of us knew or had an idea of what was happening, but to have that data is pretty helpful to say, okay, here's, some areas we definitely need to focus on. And then we've also been able to secure different grants to launch initiatives, to address racial disparities in social work licensure passage rates, which is a huge issue, not just in Minnesota or for our school, but for all of the profession of social work. And then also recently have been able to secure another grant in order to help students of color who are pursuing careers in, for all of our students, but primarily focused on students of color who are pursuing school social work as a career option, in order to provide scholarships and fellowships for them to support them while they're in school. And I've been lucky enough to, Joan and I are the co-PI or principal investigators on one of those grants. And then Joe and I are the co-PIs on another one of those grants. And so it's really exciting to be able to have those options for our students. So once we're able to attract different students to the school, to be able to provide those resources for them once they're here, in order to have a more supportive environment to hopefully make the experience while they're here better for them, so that they are they're able to have a better learning experience, and we're able to prepare them to go off into social work practice after they're done.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I knew I was going to just love spending time with you all. All right. Again, we are way over time, and I want to get you all out of here. I know you have very, very important things to do there. So just as a group, what's the best part of what you do, and what's the most challenging part of what you do? Just chime in. I'm not going to call on anyone specifically, unless you make me.
Okay. I think the best part for me is that, I'm still a social worker, even though I'm the director of the School of Social Work. I started wanting to be a judge, actually. And now I'm a social worker, and I have no regrets about that profession. It has been, it is a great profession to be a part of. And I think that's the best part of what we do, is that we get to educate the next generation of students. We get to leave an imprint on them and our community, in terms of, what knowledge that we get to impart on them, what knowledge they get to impart on us, because they teach us every day, as well. And so I really love that. I think the challenging part is just the world that we live in. And, again, I think for me, it's living the values that we say are important to us. And it is a constant everyday commitment to, those values. And again, I believe in them, which is why I'm a social worker. But we are not there yet, and we have a ways to go. And so that's the challenging part, is that we all want to be there, and we are just having to do the work every day to realize those dreams. And so I think that's the most challenging part for me.
I can quickly go. I think for me, the best part is the students and the community partners I work with. I do pinch myself some days going, wow, I get paid to do this. I had a fabulous class this morning. I'm like, I can't think of a better way to spend 2 hours. And then the most challenging, I think I'd agree, it's the world we live in, but also the system we live in. And, people describe the university as, right, a really big ship in the water, and to get it to move 1 degree takes a lot of effort. But you keep doing it because it matters and it's necessary for student learning, student growth, and student kind of flourishment, as well as continuing to connect with communities to address issues, problems, and concerns that they have. And so you constantly have to engage the system, even though the system at times is pretty stubborn.
Listen, Ross, I love that analogy of the big cruise ships because I love cruising. And I just want to add that the thing about big cruise ships is you can take this little bitty boat and you can move that whole ship. So even though sometimes it may be when you're navigating along the way, it may seem like it's a little hard and cumbersome, but when you can just take a little tugboat and move that whole ship around, I think it gives us a whole different perspective of even what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect to get like gifts of inspiration when I came today. That's okay.
Does anyone else want to add to the best part, the most challenging part of what you do? Because I want to get y'all out of here. I really do. But I also want Joan to just speak about what the next 5 years, or, what does the future look like for your school? And maybe not have to go into 5 years. But I started by stating that I understand that finding people to come into this field is getting harder and harder. It's shrinking is from what I understand. So do you have anything that you feel like is coming down the pike that's going to increase the, attendance, or at least the feeling of wanting to become a part of this school of social work?
Yeah, I think what Joe spoke about in terms of our curriculum and constantly continuing to evolve, that is one of the things, again, looking at access and looking at how we can make our program more accessible, hybrid options, different options. We know that the student that can quit their job and go to school full time is just that's not the student anymore. I mean, certainly those students exist, but the majority of students have lives. They're working, they're caring for kids and parents, and they have busy lives. And so we have to be nimble and responsive to the needs that they have in terms of that. So we're looking at that. I think continuing to look at the curriculum. The profession is moving to anti-racism, anti-oppressive practice. And so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for, the curriculum? And so, answering and asking those questions, we're moving into interprofessional education and really making sure that social workers know how to work, with multiple professions and in multiple ways, and show up in ways that they are an integral part of the team. And so really trying to prepare students for that. I think also, battling some of the effects of COVID that we've kind of mentioned a little bit, but there's some things that got lost in those 3 years of kind of being sheltering in place. And so having to kind of be responsive to that. I think that students are coming to school with a lot more anxiety and pressure and financial responsibility. I mean, just a lot. And so I think really trying to be as responsive to students' needs, really being a place where students come and can learn and grow and be transformed. And like I said, also that we're transformed in the process, that this is bi-directional, that they affect us and they change us, and hopefully we affect them and change them. And so that's the kind of environment that I'm trying to create. That's what the next 5 years looks like. And I'm just excited to be here and excited to be with my leadership team, who are going to help me to realize those goals.
Yes. And what an amazing team. Joe, I feel like there's something that you want to say. So I just want to make sure that we're good before we get out of here.
I'm good.
Awesome. Thank you to all of our guests, Dr. Blakey, Molly, Ross, Joe, Suzanne, Lynette. I, again, appreciate you taking time out of your very, very busy schedules that I know you have. And we have run over, so if you need to go on and get off, I definitely understand. If you can just hold back a couple of more minutes as I say goodbye to everyone, I would like to just come back and talk about what's coming up. So thank you again. And this is one of the things that I'm really trying to do more as we get out of here, because y'all deserve it. All right, so let me take you guys on out. Hang tight if you can. Otherwise, we'll talk soon. So, all right. I'm telling you, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. I really, really hope that everyone has enjoyed kind of, I don't know, what I've been trying to do, at least in this particular with this one. In this episode, we got schooled on how amazing the leadership is over at the School of Social Work. We discovered exactly what it means to be a social worker. Even I didn't know all of the ins and outs of where we can find these wonderful people within our communities and the work that they're doing. We also learned that there is a connection. There is a connection that social workers must have to the understanding of children's emotional development, why that's important. We began to learn about the University of Minnesota School of Social Work and the values that drive their mission: leadership and scholarship, social justice, community engagement, researching mental health, and preparing to build a better world. We'll dive deeper into those topics in future episodes. So your assignment this week, because I'm going to give you an assignment, your assignment this week is to visit their website and learn more about their vision, their philosophy, their programs, the faculty, staff, and students, and come back here next week with questions and be ready to engage with us. The link to their website is in the description. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can find them. And then let me just share with you what we're going to be talking about next week, because I'm excited to have the conversation about social justice and community engagement. Katrina seems like a very, very amazing person, just like everyone has been. So make sure you come back next week. We'll discuss the school's commitment to social justice and community engagement, what this means to Minnesota since the murder of George Floyd and the protests that followed. Our guest, again, is Katrina. She's a senior social worker and activist that has expertise working with chronically stressed individuals and families in a variety of complex settings, but most importantly, always in community. I'm looking forward to having this conversation and having her join us next Wednesday. Follow us on all the social media outlets: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, YouTube. Visit our website to learn more about us and other ways to connect to us. And lastly, please sign up to receive our newsletter. That link is also in the descriptions. That way, once you start getting the MACMH Minute, you'll stay updated on all the ways we're leading with compassion, knowledge, and support. We encourage you to respectfully submit your opinion of the episode. And I think that's all of the housekeeping I have. I hope, again, that if nothing else you've learned from today, that the School of Social Work at the University of Minnesota is led by truly amazing people who are thoughtful in the process as you think about where your child should go. If you are thinking about starting this, career on your own, think about the University of Minnesota School of Social Work. It sounds like what they're building there is amazing, already on amazing foundation, as we heard about the history as well. 1917. I mean, it's been around a long time. All right, so listen, I'm going to let you go. Again, I very, very much appreciate you joining, and we will see you next week. Thank you.